Assalamu alaikum. I hope you all are well and your families as well. Welcome again. This is the third lecture of English poetry 18th to 19th century for both the programs BS Honors and Masters. Sorry. The course code of this course is ENGL 3123. Naam Shahzadi Samra. So today the topic of our lecture is as we are reading about the William Wordsworth, obviously the second poem of the William Wordsworth, that is the composed upon Westminster Bridge. That is exactly the poem that we are going to read today. That is actually a sonnet. So before starting the poem, I would like to tell you about a sonnet. That what exactly a sonnet is. Sonnet is a kind of poetry or is a type of poetry which consists of one stanza and 14 lines. It is basically a form of poetry in which it is only contain one stanza and without any breakage, and it has 14 lines. The rhyming scheme, it has quite a strict rhyming scheme, and that rhyming scheme is iambic pentameter. Basically the word sonnet, it is derived from the Italian word sonato or sonato, meaning a little sound or song, and a popular classical form that has compelled poets for centuries. There are characteristics of the sonnet. The characteristics of sonnet that it has 14 lines, it follows a strict rhyming scheme, and it is written in iambic pentameter. It is a meter in which has 10 beats per line, and made up of alternating unstressed and stressed syllables. So there are two types of sonnets. First one is the Petrarch sonnet, that is the original form of sonnet and the old form of sonnet, and it is an Italian form of sonnet. Second is the Shakespearean sonnet, that is the English sonnet, and it came after the words in the era of Shakespeare, obviously Elizabethan era. So Petrarch sonnet, moving on to Petrarch sonnet. Petrarch basically was a poet and famous poet from the Italian Renaissance, and already the Romantics, they were as I told you in the first lecture, they were inspired from the past and the ancient literature, and the Petrarch was also the Italian poet, so they were inspired from him as well, and that's why Wordsworth followed the Petrarch sonnet instead of following the English sonnet. Many romantics, they followed this style. So Petrarchan sonnet is also consists of 14 lines that are arranged in two sections. One is the octet, and the set of 8 lines, and the second one is the sestet, set of 6 lines. Both have different rhyming schemes. First 8 lines, it has rhyming scheme of A B B A B B A, and the sestet, the rhyming scheme of the sestet is C D C D C D, or in exceptional cases can be the C D E C D E. Then comes the Shakespearean sonnet. Shakespearean sonnet is the made of 3 quatrains. Okay. As I told you in the characteristics of the sonnet, that it is divided into group of it can be divided or broken down into the group of 4 sections, and each section is called quatrain. Quatrain is the basically the group of 4 sentences or 4 lines. And the Shakespearean sonnet is made of 3 quatrains and a heroic couplet. And the rhyming scheme of those quatrains are A B A B, C D C D, E F E F. In the closing rhymed heroic couplet G G. Do you know the Shakespearean sonnet? That is, it is a elaborated form of the Shakespearean sonnet, that it does contain in first quatrain, second quatrain, third quatrain, and the fourth quatrain. Fourth, basically, it is not a quatrain, rather a heroic couplet, which consists of 2 lines in the rhyming scheme of GG. First quatrain, it does discusses the subject of the sonnet. Discusses the subject of the sonnet, and the number of lines are 4 in the rhyming scheme AB AB. Second quatrain, it develops this theme of the sonnet, develops the idea. For example, when we write a paragraph, there is always a thesis statement or the problem statement, and we write things in order to support that statement, and all the other details are called the relevant details. So the second and third quatrain are kind of those. They develop the themes, and they help the subject in development. The fourth last one is the heroic couplet, that is basically the conclusion of the sonnet. It is about the sonnet, and I would like you to know, I wanted you to know about the sonnet before reading the William Wordsworth sonnet composed upon Westminster Bridge, and I hope, I'm sure that you have read the types of poetry in your, I guess, first or second semester as well. But I know that you hardly remember that. So move on to the next. Wordsworth sonnet composed upon Westminster Bridge, September 3rd, 1802. This is basically the whole title of the sonnet. Form and meter of this sonnet. Okay, I was about to tell the form and meter of the sonnet. It is a Petrarch sonnet, and obviously the Italian sonnet written in pentameter with 10 syllables per line, in alternatively stressed and unstressed syllables. In the rhyming scheme of the sonnet is straightforward. The first section, like the octet, is the first one is the octet, and the second one is the sestet. And I already told you the rhyming scheme of the octet and the sestet. It is like the Tintin Abbey. This poem is also kind of the autobiographical poem. Why do we somehow find every work of the Wordsworth autobiographical work? Because he only writes things based on his experience. He never strays away from the experience or from his personal feelings or personal emotions. So the work or the praise he's written for the bridge, or I guess that is also based on the experience. First things first, when we write something in the praise of that thing, isn't it that called odd? That thing is called odd, but what he did, it is an ode as well as the sonnet, because he is writing in the praise of that thing. but Wordsworth didn't categorize it in the ode, rather he categorizes it in the sonnet, and it was even published in the magazine of the sonnet, where all those sonnets were published who criticized the industrial revolution or industrial England. So it was published in those magazines. So back to the point, that is the autobiographical poem. Okay, the experience that was actually he was on a trip with his sister Dorothy, and they were going to France. So on the way to France, he experienced this thing, he experienced this scene, and he wrote about it. Basically, when the okay, I'll tell you that later. The title marks a specific place and time, a viewpoint over the London's River Thames during the Industrial Revolution. So it was time the revolutions were happening, as I told you in the second lecture about that how the French Revolution had an impact on Wordsworth, and this poem is written after a long time, and it also brought a change in all the revolutions brought a change in the philosophy of the Wordsworth. So this poem, when we talk about the Romantics, automatically the idea of the nature and the love for nature comes into our mind. But here is something different in this sonnet. We'll see what is that. So the title marks a specific place and time, and the viewpoint over London's River Thames during the Industrial Revolution, and basically this he wrote this poem in the praise of the city. And when city at dawn, and he's talking about the breathtaking beauty of the city, and even the industrial things. That is actually the turning point. That is the point from the last work we read, that he was in love with nature, and now he's finding beauty in those things that he don't find much appealing. He's finding beauty in everything. So move on to the text and the explanation of the poem. It is a sonnet, so it was easy to put the text in the slide, and I put that, and I'll also provide this in the word form, so that it may become easy for you to open and the text and to listen the lecture. Okay, move on to the line, the octet. As it's a sonnet and it is divided into two sections, the octet and the sestet. So first I am going to explain, or I am going to analyze the first section, the octet of the poem. So let's start the explanation of the poem. First one is, let me read a bit of text so that you may know that what exactly is happening. The setting of the poem is like Wordsworth is passing through the bridge, the Westminster Bridge, and he is just observing the scenery. He is standing on that bridge basically, and it was the early morning scene, and we all know that the twilight or the early morning scenes are so beautiful. Sunrises are so beautiful, and they are refreshing to the mind and to the soul as well. So that thing is exactly happening with the Wordsworth. If any one of you ever experienced such kind of thing, that if you observe the early morning scene, and at the rooftop or from the window, you will observe the as if a whole city is sleeping. Okay, these days I can give you, I can relate that scene with these days, although it is some kind of the bad situation or the negative situation, but we can bring out the positive in it. If you observe the city these days, it will give you the sense of calmness. If you just skip the negativity out of it, and you just focus on the positivity, it gives you the sense of calmness, as if the whole city is sleeping, as if the whole world is healing. So Wordsworth is experiencing something like that, and he is standing on the Westminster Bridge, and he starts with, "Earth has not anything to show more fair." Earth means all the blues and all the blues and the green parts of the earth, all the blues and green parts of the earth, known as the earth, like whole globe. Earth has not anything to show more fair. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by. A sight so touching in its majesty, this city now doth like a garment wear the beauty of the morning, silent, bare. Ships, towers, domes, theatres, and temples lie open unto the fields and to the sky, all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. This is the basically the octet of the poem, so I'm going to explain it. He has started the with like earth is not anything to show more fair. For the first time, I guess he was talking about something solid. He wasn't only talking about the nature, rather he is talking about the whole earth, everything in it. So he says that earth has not anything to show more fair, that it isn't earth hasn't anything more fair to show anything more bright, anything more beautiful than this scene, the present at the moment. So he says, instead he dwells the connection between the city and the nature by describing the city as itself as a natural feature of the earth. And so according to him, that city is actually better looking than the any other feature of the earth, and to the point that the sight of it is touching, that is the breathtaking sight. And earth is a word that more strongly connotes the planet's green and the blue wilderness than the image of the city. So he says that earth seems proud. Earth seems like as if earth is showing off that I have this city as beautiful, and it is like an offspring to me, it is like my child. So yeah, he's talking like that, and the reason for this, that city hasn't yet woken up, and the industrial processes or all the humdrum of the city, all the activities are on halt, and because every person is getting ready for the work in their house, in their homes, and there isn't any rush, or there isn't any kind of activity taking place at that moment. And the bridge, that is also depicting the calmness. The bridge is basically the Westminster Bridge. A bridge, what is bridge basically? It is a simple bridge which connects two different parts, which connects two different things. So he is basically creating a bond between human world and the natural world. So by using bridge, he is trying to create that. although the bridge is a human made structure, in the previous lectures we talked about that he was saying that because of all the civilization and man is getting away from the humanity. So in this he is rather appreciating those structures. He is not appreciating the civilization, because civilization is still asleep. Civilization is still, people are not the city is not in the process, the city is not working, the industries are not working, the government is not working right now, everything is at a halt. So he is appreciating the scenery, he is appreciating the man-made structures. He says that the bridge, it puts distance between people and the water, but it also creates a space for people to appreciate a different angle of the water and a different angle of the nature. So the bridge allows people to overcome the distance and to enjoy the nature fully. So this bridge is creating a link between two words exactly. Okay, then comes that dull would he be of soul who could pass by. He's condemning that person, or saying that soul is dead, and according to the poet that soul is dull, who will just skip this scenery and will move on. And that scenery is breathtaking and he cannot even imagine to overlook this scenery. So he says that that person would be dull, the soul of that person would be dull, who will just overlook this scenery and who would not enjoy this majesty side. He using the word majesty, it means he is greatly as that scene was quite spellbinding in scene. So he using the word majesty, a sight so touching in its majesty, this city now thought like a garment wear. And he says that it feels like this city is wearing the garment that is so beautiful that one cannot just overlook it. For the girls, if someone is wearing the beautiful outfit, and the girls, wow, but like girls are just unable to enjoy or to praise the beauty exactly. So Wordsworth is not a girl, but he's an artist, so he's also enjoying the beauty, he's also bringing the beauty in things. One thing more, the octet of the poem, it does contain a theme. I have also written themes at the end of the poem. The first theme is the nature versus civilization. So this octet is all about that theme. Everything that I am explaining in here, you can write those things in the elaboration of that theme as well. So moving on, London is instead bright and glittering in the smokeless air, silent and bare. Why the London is bright and why the London is glittering? Because the air is not polluted yet. Everything is sleeping. Nothing is in the function, or not even any industry. There isn't any noise of traffic. There isn't any noise of anything. So because of this, there is serenity, there is the sense of calmness, and he says that it feels like it is complete in itself. The city is complete in itself. So he also challenges the perceived borders between nature and the city, and those perceived borders are basically, he says that those are the ships, towers, domes, theaters and temples, and it just does create scenery, the contrast between the scenery of the urban scenery and the natural scenery. And rather In fact, although there is a contrast between the urban scenery and the natural scenery, he is still considering the urban scenery a part of the natural scenery. And he is still considering that a part of the natural world. He isn't just shunning that thing out. So he says that as and it is all because of the human beings and because of their technical skills. And he says that there are different forms of the natural scenery, like the mountains, cliffs, canyons, trees, etc. But these structures, ships, stars, domes, theaters and temples, they open unto the fields as if to acknowledge their debt, as if they are acknowledging their debt to the sky, and as if to locate both the city's and aspiration and its limits. And this describe the city's openness, its fluid borders. It doesn't define that where the city ends, or from where the city ends from, and from where the nature begins. Rather, those things, the city and the nature, both are amalgamated, both are interrelated. You cannot separate one thing from the other. So he says that sun shines as beautifully on these structure as it does on the natural world of the valley, rock or hill. Like sun shining, he says that I have never seen the sun shining so brightly on these structure as on these on the natural world, as brightly it's shining on these structures. And he is quite amazed and he is quite inspired by that scenery, that sun is shining brightly and everything. I wish you could just imagine that scenery, that that is the breathtaking scenery, that is the spellbinding scenery. That is why he is using the word majestic for this scenery. So he's just mixing the city and the nature and the civilization. He's mixing and he's bringing out the beauty from both things. And he has described the London as the mighty heart. That is the about in the last lines. And so I was saying that the sun never shed his light as brightly on the natural world as brightly it's shedding its light on these structures. Okay. And he's just the imagery, the buildings are also silent, and the beer, everything is silent and everything is just presenting the sense of calmness. And the imagery suggests that the city itself is a place of peace and renewal, but just you have to find that peace. So moving on to the next section of the poem is sorry, I guess I have added some kind of repetition. Okay, the ninth line of the poem is: never did sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor, valley, rock or hill. Never saw I, never felt a calm so deep. The river gilled at his own sweet will, the dear God, the very houses seemed asleep. And all that mighty heart is lying still. So that the thing or the imagery about the sun and there is light on the features are and the structures of the city that basically belong to the subtext of the poem. And he says that the city is shining like a diamond and air is quite clear because sun is spreading, or sun is shedding its light on the city to let it shine, and city is just absorbing that light, and reflecting that light, and it is shining like a diamond. And because of the everything is at halt, and because of the which air is clear, there isn't any pollution. The sunlight has never shone on any feature of the natural landscape more beautifully than it is shining now. So he says that I have never seen and nor felt such pure and unwavering tranquility, unwavering, the calmness that I'm feeling right now. And the river that flows, it just flowing naturally, guided by the forces of nature. There isn't any human force guiding the river to flow or to change its flow. In fact, it is flowing calmly, and it is flowing naturally. And by talking of the river, we also read about the river in the Tintern Abbey, and according to the Wordsworth, the river is the symbol of spirituality and calmness and peace. So here is also saying that river is not guided by the external force, rather it is guided by the force of nature, and it is bringing calmness. And he says that houses are seen houses are seen even they are asleep. Even how can houses be asleep? There isn't any kind of activity. That's why it seems like the houses are asleep as well. And those houses are this or are the structure, or are the I just forgot the word, or like example, you may say the example of the civilization, man civilization, and the man-made constructs. And he's saying that those that civilization is asleep basically. And if the civilization is asleep, how beautiful a city can be. He's trying to say that it is because of all the civilization that we have brought our nature to end. And he's saying if the civilization is asleep, we can still regain the beauty. And even the cities, they can be beautiful, they can reflect beauty, and they can be part of nature if there won't be any civilization. And it is because of the civilization that we are getting away from nature, that our surroundings and our environment is getting away from nature, although it is a part of nature, but still it is getting away from it. So for this moment, he says that civilization is sleeping, and the beating heart of man-made construct is lying still. When a person is asleep, his heart it beats slowly, or the sleeping is the kind of or the state of half death. So he described London as the mighty heart in the final line, and which the mighty heart is basically the center, not center, rather the major part. If heart stops working, then everything will come to an end. So he's using a metaphor for the London, that London is like a heart, because all the governmental states are located there, and all the state affairs are they are carried on and this starts from London. So that's why he says London is like the heart in the physical sense and in the metaphorical sense as well, and it is reminding us of the centrality of its importance. So he's apart from creating beauty, apart from telling, he's just trying to tell that he wrote this poem during the industrial revolution, and he's just giving the idyllic picture of London that might be far from reality when the city is awake. So he is trying to depict that, and he's depicting the Rosicrucian and the ideal image of the city. If there won't be any if there won't be the smoke of any industry, if there won't be any noise, and it will be like every scenery will be like this morning scenery. So he's just trying to again, he isn't directly lamenting, but he's just indirectly conveying the message that it is because of us, we humans, we corrupted nature and we corrupted our own selves. So he's trying to convey that message. Okay, now come towards the conclusion. Okay, the conclusion. I already told you that Wordsworth is finding beauty, and nature is constantly changing. The poem says, despite of the constant change, Wordsworth's bringing a kind of spirit to the city. His the city, which is usually seen as a simple construction of rock and metal and concrete, he's bringing the beauty out of these things, and he's saying these things are beautiful, and he shows the fleetingness of beauty, that how it keeps on changing. And he's suggest that by embracing the stillness, the calmness, the serenity and the clarity of the morning such as these, the city dweller can learn to appreciate the briefly beautiful moments that can only a city offer. So he's just suggesting that if we just find our time, if we just find some time from the busy routine to enjoy such change, we can learn that even in the darkest of time, we can there is still light if just one remembers to put candle on. So that is basically by the Dumbledore in the that is the Harry Potter movie. So that quote was basically by him. I just quoted now. So Wordsworth is suggesting that same thing actually. He's just trying to convey that he is just suggesting again and again that we should find some time to be in the company of nature. I hope you all get the theme, or sorry, not the theme, rather the explanation of the poem. It wasn't difficult. It is so easy that you can even write in your own words. So let's move on towards the themes. Nature versus civilization, whole poem, and the whole explanation that I did, and I was doing from like about past 30 minutes or past 25 minutes, that comes under the elaboration of the nature versus civilization. Then comes individuality versus community. Individuality, basically the singleness, and the community, the whole. Individuality is a single part and the community on the whole. So he's comparing both things. He's looking at the city as a single on its buildings, on the structures individually, and he's looking at the city through on the whole. If we look at the city on the whole, we won't find much beauty in it. And if we just start finding beauty, we'll just find beauty in every building, in every structure of the city. So that is just the looking on the whole and looking in individuality. That is the difference between both, and that it does create a tension between the both. So what he is doing, he is looking at the city as the individual and as the community as well. The first three lines, so it emphasizes the tension between the individual and the city, or between the part or the whole. So because they make opinionated claims about the beauty of the city, and the first two lines confirms that a single city dweller is talking, just a visitor is talking. The third line, it widens the scope, and the poem isn't about the particular street level, rather he's talking about the broader, he's talking about the borders as well, or the sea or the river as well. He's talking on the broader level. He's using the word majestic on majesty of the city. He's talking about the majesty of the city basically, and it is filtered through one person perspective, and that person is basically the poet. So we are just looking at the city through his perspective as he is describing the imagery. So if we look through the single person's perspective, it does seem beautiful, and how he is depicted the picture of the city. And if we see it on the whole, it will we will just see it as the construction, or the some, like I mentioned the conclusion, that some rock and metal and the concretes or bricks, all these things, we will just find the solid structures instead of finding beauty. So that is a tension, or that is the between the difference between individuality and community, and that is a clash between in both. So he says that whatever it is, but both the individual city or the city as a whole, they both represents different imagery, and both are breathtaking and both are striking. Like city as a whole, he says the houses, the scene sleep, and all that mighty heart is lying still. And he's using the plural, and then using the heart as a singular. So he is mixing individual single part, or the community whole part, and he is saying that whether we look at the city individually from the single man's perspective and from the whole, it will look beautiful. It just depends on us how to take it, or how to bring out the beauty, or how to bring the spirit in it. So that is the individuality versus community. Third one is the fleeting beauty, and sorry, I just misspelled it with the fleeting beauty. So it is the fleeting beauty. Fleeting beauty means it will pass, it won't come back. So that is the fleeting beauty, the impermanence of beauty basically. So he is talking about the scene he is talking about is a particular scene, and it is the dawn time. So it means that this will move, this will pass on, this will pass, and he might not be able to see this scene again. So he just he is finding tranquility in the fleeting beauty as well. And fleeting beauty, why he is calling it a fleeting beauty? Because when the city wakes up, and it will interrupt all the calmness, the industry and everything, and the air will get polluted, and there won't be anything that will provide you serenity, or that will give you the tranquility or the calmness of the nerves as well. So he's just describing the morning sunlight in which the city is bare and shining and silent, and he's even in the years of the industrial revolution, he is just describing the beauty of the moment. And he knows that this moment will pass, and he might not be able to see it again. He is just describing describing the impermanence of the tranquility and the beauty as well. And he insists that despite the change, beauty can always be recovered. Okay, what he says next, obviously we all know that it is the period of industrial revolution, and we can imagine what will bring the after hours, what will come next. Although he is not describing what will come after, he is just describing the present moment, the serenity, the calmness, the fresh air, the shining city, and shining sun. He's just describing the present moment, but we know that what will come after, as it is the industrial city. So everything will again become, it will become polluted. There will be a rush, and there will be the noise of traffic. And even in the busy industrial city, the river at this moment, it is it is just flowing without any force. That is because there isn't any ship, there isn't any kind of blockage, and it is just flowing naturally without anything blocking its way. So to conclude, we can say that he is just describing that without the interference of man, how everything can be beautiful, and how everything, or even after the interference of man, one man can find in beauty, and it is just a matter of perception. So that is all for now, and about the composed upon Westminster Bridge. Okay, thank you for your patience, thank you for listening. Stay blessed. Allah Hafiz.